And, one of the things I think is so important, as we go down this road is certain people think, and when they look at successful people and they look at people who are quote unquote living the dream, we live in this age now where everything is instant and cookie cutter, right? You see people who are on Instagram and they have the best bodies and they have the best relationships and they have the best businesses. And it was just like, boom, like it just happened. And oh my God, their life is so great. They must have had something that I didn't have. And
They
one,
scratched that lottery ticket.
I got the numbers.
I got the
Got the right
numbers.
numbers.
That's right. Yeah.
And as Thomas and I know, that is the furthest thing from the truth. Um, we all have the same thing. It is a set of it is a set of skills, and it is really the tenacity to learn and never give up that separates the people who are successful and get to where they want to go and the people who are not.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of opening up the discussion, Thomas, kind of, in terms of success, and, because you are a very successful coach who've coached hundreds of people in multiple different ways, in multiple different languages. I will let you guys see that in a little bit. Um, how have you where did it start for you? Where did it start on this journey on you developing you and wanting to get better?
Hmm. Well, that could be, that's a small question.
well.
Well, I mean, so obviously there is always these stories, right? I think if we start with being kids, and I'm going to answer this more broadly first and then point the mirror, so to speak, back at myself. But for me, when for anybody, we're born into a world and we have to figure out, like, okay, what is acceptable in this family? What is considered taboo? What gets approval? So there's one thing, it's okay to do something. It's another thing that actually gets approval. And then how do you act? How do you show up in the world? What are people around me doing? And this is when we walk into that family talking about these stories and this mindset, it's okay, we want safety, we want to have dignity, and we want to feel like we belong. How do we respond to those different elements? In my family, there was a lot about academic performance and being academically successful. That was the mark of acceptance, basically.
Yes.
You had to have this. And so if I started with that, right? And so it was it's like, okay, I need to do this. I need to have a certain degree or a certain type of degree in order to be seen and accepted. And then, of course, like, what is the expectation of male versus female? And both men and women in my family are highly educated, but there is still, like, what's expected from a man and what are the roles, what are the careers that are accepted? And those are sometimes different between male and female. But for me, it's also been a journey into being, because this runs counter to what it was seen as acceptable for men, was touching back, being connected to my heart and being connected to my body. And when I was in college, I was a competitive cyclist, and my knees went out rather unexpectedly. So I had all these knee problems, and in the process of recovery from that, I guess the universe was encouraging me to open up and feel in new ways and get out of my head. And that is something that is really common in our society, is that we just live from here up. So this, right, the rest of the body takes us from meeting to meeting. It gets us across a college campus or across town to get lunch, or it gets us from the car to the front door. But do we actually know what it's feeling, what it's experiencing? And so it's been this journey really over the last several decades since college to, and yes, I'm dating myself by saying that, but it's just working on that slowly and sort of saying, okay, so what is it like for me to show up wholly, and how can I walk in this world and show all of myself and be accepted? And that's a continuous journey. I'm still working with that, and it's still scary. And being able, and I feel like this also touches a little bit on what you were talking about earlier with the questions around scarcity, which is also a very prevalent theme in our society, in our culture. How do we take these elements of scarcity and how do they show up in our lives? And it might be, oh, I don't have time, or, oh, I can't justify spending that money because, or I'm afraid that I'm not good enough. There's scarcity in my capabilities, in my competence. Well, how are you going to learn? A baby doesn't say, well, I can't walk, so I'm not going to try. A baby doesn't say, I can't talk, so I'm not going to try. A baby starts vocalizing very shortly after they're practicing, even if they just cry initially as a newborn, they are practicing exercising their vocal cords so that they can learn how to speak. And they are already attuned to what that sounds like after being in utero and hearing the language around them during those 9 months. So that's already attuned their brain to certain sounds already. And then they just practice speaking and they eventually learn that language, but they keep trying and they keep developing vocabulary and other things. So it's, how do we bring that same persistence and willingness to grow, to try, to experiment? The first time you climbed a tree as a kid, did you think you could make it to the top? Probably not. I remember one time I got up into this tree, I could pull myself up, but I couldn't get myself down. And I ended up skinning my stomach on the bark.
Wow.
And it hurt like hell. And it's still one of my fondest memories of childhood because I did it. I did it, even though it was crazy, right? And even though I was, hanging from the lowest branch about 18 inches from the ground, and I was afraid to drop. So I could have just pushed away from the tree and dropped down. I would have probably been fine, but I chose to hang on to the trunk and I skinned myself, right? So, but that's part of learning.
Yes.
So how comfortable do we feel with continuing that, right? Because we expect, oh, well, I can't do that anymore. I'm an adult. It's not responsible.
Right.